Good morning from Bangladesh. And we have two guests from one from America and, of course, one from Bangladesh. I'll soon introduce you, but let me give you a brief about why we are having this webinar today. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar organized as part of Zonta International's 16 Day of Activism to End Gender-Based Violence. Zonta International, established in 1919, is a global organization of professionals dedicated to empowering women through service and advocacy. For over a century, Zonta has worked tirelessly to promote gender equality, end violence against women, and ensure a better future for all. The 16 Days of Activism is a global campaign that underscores our commitment to addressing critical issues affecting women and girls worldwide. This year, we focus on evolving family values and gender dynamics, breaking barriers to gender equality, and tackling early childhood marriage. These topics are not just challenges, but opportunities for transformative change. I'm honored to have with us insightful and distinguished speakers who will share their thoughts, opinions, and possible solutions to these pressing matters. So let's begin by introducing our esteemed guests. So we have Nazim Farhan Chaudhry. He is the CEO at Com Limited. He's a serial entrepreneur, one of the sharks in Shark Tank edition in Bangladesh. But no matter what he does or says, he identifies himself as a feminist. And we have Avi Shan Rahman. He's a final year physics student in Rutgers University, USA. So welcome, both of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
So let's start. So what's your take on it? Let me start with Farhan. So breaking barriers to gender equality. Let's start with that. So what's your take on it? I mean, how does the concept of gender equality, it has evolved in your lifetime? I mean, what cultural or social barriers, if you had faced any, and if you think the women of our country faces? Let's talk about
Right.
that.
So Anara, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to speak, particularly for Zonta, because I've actually known Zonta all my life. My mother was a active Zonta person. Growing up, we used to see Zonta meetings all the time, and matter of fact, she was at one time the president at Zonta as well. So that's an organization that I've grown up seeing very closely. And what Zonta used, and I'm sure still does, is sort of bring in very progressive, active professional people in the organization. So grew up seeing a lot of strong female leadership and role models around my life. Um, this is usually not true for most people growing up in Bangladesh, seeing strong female um, in places of authority. Um, so my upbringing is slightly different from what I presume is the norm, not only in Bangladesh, but in most places where the glass ceiling is still there and we've not broken through. Particularly in the recent past, you've seen in the U.S. elections, the second time around, they failed to elect a female president. Um, not without getting into not with about getting into politics, but I think we need to figure out how do we bring in both men and women into leadership positions, not only in corporate but also in politics, in every sphere of our world. It is about sort of making sure that everybody participates, and the best of the best in our society gets to participate. By excluding a gender, you're or actually excluding a large proportion of that population and not of that opportunity. So hopefully over the next, I presume an hour, we hopefully will explore that a bit more and try to understand how can we go about it. So I'm looking forward to it. Thanks.
Okay. So, Avi, do you have any take on it? I mean, how does your generation look at it about breaking barriers to gender equality? Do you think you have broken, or do you think you need to address this more with your technology, your kind of advancement in education? How do you look at it?
I think in the past, traditionally, gender roles were very rigid. Men were seen as providers and women were seen as caregivers. There was a very patriarchal structure. But with modernization, with urbanization, with shifts in social attitudes, and growing recognition of women's rights, now women are allowed to participate more in education and the workforce worldwide. There's new family structures, including single parent households and same sex marriages. And with all these advances now, including awareness allowed through technology, um, households are taking a more egalitarian approach, focusing on shared responsibilities, and traditional ideas about men and women's roles in family life and in work are being challenged, and that's a good thing.
But how do you look at it? I mean, your generation, what's your take on it? Are you okay with this? You want women to come up, work with you shoulder to shoulder to do things. How do you see it? I mean, you have seen the generation before you, and you, as you said, and now it's your generation. So, what's your take on it? You as a person, if I ask your personal opinion, like Farhan shared his life, right? Personally, how he has seen things happen, and then he spoke about it overall around him. So, how do you see it? I mean, how would you take it?
So all my brothers, all my cousins, they were all boys.
Yeah,
But I talked to some of my female friends, and some of them found that they were raised equally, or they were raised the same as their male siblings. Others found that they had some more restrictions, or they had some 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 stereotypes that they had
socio-economic
to
kind of
face.
restriction. And
Yeah, and they had some stereotypes that they had to face, like if they're trying to be independent or being strong-willed, where a man you would call strong-willed, a woman you might call bossy.
yeah,
Um, Things like that they had to face. But I think it's very important that there needs to be strong role models, both men and women, for everybody. Um, I have I have a lot of strong independent women in my life, my mom, my aunts, my grandmothers. So I think I have strong role models both ways, and I think that's very important for everybody.
Yeah, I think to pick up on what Avi is saying, that role model needs to be there, and it needs to be across all genders. It can't be just female role models for females. You actually also have to have a male or masculine role models, which who are as equally feminist and as equally helping the movement go forward as you need females. Oftentimes we've seen, and I will applaud to you because you've reached out to men to talk about this, because most of the time it's an echo chamber. Women talking to women, and men get left out of this conversation altogether.
yeah.
And I think that's important. I mean, if we want to approach gender equality, we need to figure out, get everybody to speak about it. And feminism is not a female issue;
Yeah.
it's a human issue. We need to address it that way.
That means that it needs more visibility and more awareness. And
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
so, how
not
do you go
only
about it? How do you think in a place like Bangladesh, suppose? Although I, being a Bengali, I feel that we've come a long way. I mean, I'm the president right now, although of a woman organization, but we have come a long way, and there are women who had opportunities. But how do you think we can sort of progress this, make it on a
I
bigger
think
scale?
how I think the way we've been approaching we just need to accelerate it. I mean, if you actually look at Bangladesh, we've done huge strides in getting women and educated and empowered.
Yeah,
I mean, we have free primary and secondary education for female
yeah,
to ensure that and there are schemes whereby we incentivize families to send their daughters to study. So,
yeah,
for example, um, earlier on we had free education given, but we still saw that enrollment to schools were low
yeah,
because they were still using their young females to do household chores and things.
yeah,
They rather have that than send them to school.
yeah,
So we've got schemes where we actually give, um, I believe, rice, 1 kg of rice a week for
yeah,
you to, or a certain amount of rice a week
yeah,
if your daughter comes to school.
yeah,
That has pushed up the enrollment of females in the education system. That in turn has, and if you look at results, women do really, really well
yes,
in primary and secondary education. There are more women than men in that education system.
Yeah.
The problem becomes when from the secondary we move to the tertiary education, university education.
Yeah.
We see a flip in the number of men to women participating in tertiary education.
Yeah.
But even then, women do still do better academically in marks than male do.
Mm.
But then every step from there, you see a decrease. So if you go from university education to entry level jobs, there's a drop. From entry level jobs to mid management to higher management, upper management. So there've been drops, and on the very top, there's literally a handful of women who are leading the major corporates in Bangladesh.
Yeah.
There are, but there's handful, and we need to figure out how to approach that. And that approach can't be one approach. I mean, you have to attend it on different sides. The things
Yeah, it's a bit. You're
is
okay.
that they
Hallelujah.
ensure that every listed company must have at least one woman independent director
Yeah.
on the board. So you're encouraging women's points of view into boards, and
Yeah.
we all know from a lot of studies that as you get more women in decision-making place, uh, companies tend to become a much more balanced, a much more thoughtful, sort of an organization. So there's effort on. Similarly, on the bottom side, you must excuse me. I think my dogs are might be barking a bit.
No problem.
So yeah, as I say, as much as you need to go in the top, you need to also sort of do things in the bottom where you're actually getting in the recruits in the corporate. So ensuring safety in transport, ensuring that you understand and the work limits that somebody might have, or priorities that female colleagues of ours might have,
Yeah.
and address that. So to do that, it's a multi-pronged approach.
I had a question for you. A lot of women, I think I was discussing with you the other day, the maternity leave. I mean, which sort of discourages women, they step back a while and then a lot of them don't want to come back. How could we tackle this? I mean, because it's a way of nature, right? But how can we sort of encourage women that even if the maternity leave is there, uh, they shouldn't stop working? A lot of them do, but they take a long
Yeah.
leave. So how can we go about changing this? I mean, can the company, the corporate places help them, or maybe from government
See,
base something can be done?
what feminism is about is giving you the right to choose the career that you or the life that you want. Now, if you want to raise a family and not work, that is fine. If you want to uh, work, do the opposite, that's also fine. When you want to take a career role and not raise have a family, that's all right. Because we look down nowadays in this hyper feministic world. If somebody says that, hey, I don't want to work, I want to just raise a family, there's a pushback. And a similar way, if somebody says, I don't want a family, I don't have kids, I want to do career, there's a drawback. That's a you know people criticize that. So both those should be okay for females to choose. But where do we choose when somebody wants to do both career and family?
Yeah.
And my mother, for example, raised my sister and I while running one of Bangladesh's largest advertising agencies. So she managed that. And I must tell a story that my mother says.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, one
Please.
day, I think just after my sister was very young and I was very young, I was 2 years old. My sister was few months, and my mother was 10 minutes late to get to her work one day. And her boss called her up and said, Mrs. Chaudhary, you have to decide if you want to be a mother or a career woman. And she actually quit her job. And within a week, her clients called her up and said, Ms. Chaudhary, we want you to work. We need you to do our work. So she started her own agency, and she decided she wants to do both. I think she's, I shouldn't be saying it myself, but I think she's done a good job raising both my sister and I.
Yeah.
And so you can find that balance. Now, what corporate needs to do is figure out if we need that balance, what are the things that we need to do? Now, maternity leave is one, but it doesn't only have to be maternity leave. I mean, we can now, what COVID has proven to us, we can actually work remotely, right? So the three of us, Avir is in New Jersey, I believe.
Yes.
You're in a different part of Dhaka. I'm in a different part of Dhaka, and
Yeah.
we've gotten together and we're working. And so remote work is possible. So will we make those facilities available where we
Yeah.
can have remote work facilities? And there are other ways of doing it to make ensure that those who choose to raise a family and work at the same time,
Yeah.
do they have enough work and do they have enough systems through which they can still participate?
Yeah. Okay. And what about the pay scale? I mean, when will that change? Where they are
Well,
paid
yeah,
equally?
yeah. I mean, and well, that is something which is, I think, any big issue. I mean, I believe in the US it's 20% less, so
Yeah.
80 cents to a dollar. And we have to
Stupid.
ensure that there are laws in Bangladesh that prevent you from discriminating and against its a worker. So um, eh, absolutely, I mean, and we have to figure out as employers that how are we paying, compensating all our employees equally.
Okay. Avi, do you want to add anything to this? You heard Farhan about his take in Bangladesh. How do you think about it? It is progressing. So, living in America, have you any idea about how things are working, how the women are? Because give your output on it. How do you look at it? How do you see things from your perspective?
I know there's a lot of people very unhappy with the way things are, even though we have come a long way. We made a lot of progress. There have been legal reforms. There's been social movements. Now there's laws guaranteeing equal rights, the right to vote. That was women's suffrage movement. That was not too long ago. Um, so I think on the maternity question, we're raising the future generation, and that's an investment. So I think that needs to be taken care of. So people should have the economic freedom to decide how they want to live.
Okay. So we'll move on because I think when we were talking about the topics, we sort of merged the breaking barriers to gender equality and the evolving family values and gender dynamics. I think we sort of covered the two topics with one discussion.
Well,
So one of
I think
yeah,
one of the things is that it's very difficult to compartmentalize one part
yeah,
and not address the other. I mean,
yes, of
we
course,
can't say, okay, what is we cannot have this gender or equality stories
yeah,
without taking the cultural context
of course,
into the picture.
yeah,
And that is very important where we try to do that.
yeah,
So we can't sort of say, hey, women needs to be in a corporate environment and working without realizing the cultural context which they are
yeah,
based in. So I'll give you an example. We are one of the largest IT exporters from Bangladesh. We have uh, this massive image correction business. So for the global advertising industry, we have people who come in and do image corrections.
okay,
And now because we have to match the our market
international,
hours,
yeah,
international hours. So to match the US hours, we have to work through the night. Now, what we sort of looked at and said, what we do is similar akin to what happens in the garment industry, and we can have a lot of females coming in. Um, but then that means they have to do night shifts. We were mindful of that. That look, bringing a woman to do a night shift might not be a very easy thing to do. So when we first started doing it, we had the family come in
yeah,
and say that, okay, why don't you join and your female member, you spend here, we've got a lounge, we've got food, sit there, watch everybody else work to see that, look, we're safe, we're a nice environment. And initially, a lot of these people came, the husbands, and used to come in, sit while the woman used to work to see what was happening. Then, and we also understood, okay, it's just not the husband and her, it's
yeah,
also the family. So we
Yeah.
used to bring the mother, the fathers of our colleagues in as well and say, don't worry about it. Here's dinner, have dinner, watch
Yeah.
everybody participate. And for a while we saw a very good number of women working the night shifts. But later on, we started realizing it's dipping again, and that is falling. And we couldn't figure out what was happening because we had facilities, we had dinner at night, we had corporate office pick up and drop services. Those are our vehicles were going and dropping off our female colleagues. So we kept on trying to figure out why they're dropping. And then when we went in and asked, we figured out that yes, the husband and understands, the father understands, the family understands. But she's been picked up and dropped, let's say, dropped 4 in the morning, 3 in the morning, 5 in the morning,
Yeah.
in an environment where the neighbors are also watching. And the
Okay.
neighbors talk that, look, why is that household has somebody going out at night and coming back at night and all that. So then it became very difficult for family to go door to door to door to explain, right? So and you still try to do that, there is that community around you which also will be able to, which also tries to who needs also to be educated. So
Yeah.
it's just not about we address one. So for us to then be able to bring women into the workforce in the for let's say for our night shifts, we would need to do a massive re-education of the area that she is. So it's a whole cultural realignment of this conversation.
Social movement. But we could make it more aware, like with my organization, that what we have been doing, like this time during the 16-day activism, we did a lot of things out of the box, which we normally don't do. Like we do a lot of webinars and discussions and seminars, but this time, one of the fun thing we did, we went to Romna Park. So for us, when we say the tri-state area, we mean Gulshan, Bonani, Baridhara. Those who live in Bangladesh, they realize it. But so we went downtown to Romna Park, and we did a walkathon there. Uh, we didn't do any slogans, anything. It was a quiet walkathon. We walked around. We gave out T-shirts and mugs and umbrellas. What I got to realize that part, I mean, almost 80% people have no idea what Zonta is all about. And when we started talking about it, advocating what we do, people were quite interested. I mean, a lot of them offered to become members and be with the movement. So I think if we make it more visible, it's the question of visibility and awareness and talking more about it, because a big group of people don't realize this. I mean, they think it's all tea parties and lady chit chat. It's not that. We are trying to bring about a change. So these things matter. And then we had a fair done. We called it the Zonta Winter Fair, where we had all these ladies, all female entrepreneurs, big and small, coming in, selling their products. And the place where we held the event, they had their staff, women staff. So we told them that we'll give you a space. We're not taking any stall money from you. You do whatever you want to do. So they all made food items and they sold that. And we told them they could keep that money. So we were trying to encourage it. So, do you think on a government level or maybe the corporates, we could have more of these all the year round? I mean, this is 16-day activism. It's not just 16-day for us, it is a lifelong, over the years thing. But do you think we could incorporate more people coming in, trying to understand? Because it needs more visibility, it needs more shout out. So, how do we go about it? Any suggestions? How do you think can be done?
Well, and of course we need it. I mean, we need to keep on doing it. It can't be just a 16-day thing.
Yeah,
It's a 365-day thing. And like I was saying, what Zonta is, and if you've seen Zonta 40 years ago when my mother
yeah,
was part of it,
yeah,
30
yeah,
years ago to what it is now, every a few years you've evolved and you've done more and you've done more and you've done more and the sort of uh, the goal is the same, but the methods might need to change. I,
yeah,
I, I presume when my mother was still there in Zonta, it was more about how do you have women helping women and sort of in the workplace to
Yeah.
tackle in a very male-dominated workplace. Now, that's still the case, but there are more women there now in the workplace. And my mother used to say there would be months where she would be going to offices and boardrooms and everything and not see another female at all. But now it's much more frequent. And when you go
Yeah.
to boardrooms, you
Yeah.
do
There
actually
is.
see a women.
Yeah.
But we need more of that. That's one. But
Yeah.
Zonta then moves and say, okay, this place somebody else is taking care of. How do we move forward, and what is the next step that we need to do? So education, communication is one. I mean, I'm sure you have activities where you take the equality story forward, and I'm sort of very jealous of Avi's as generation because they have access to all this mass media like TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, which they so brilliantly use to take a point of view forward. And I see that happening across a lot of these causes, be it the environment, be it women's rights, be it conflicts around the world. I mean, we just had at a whole regime change in Bangladesh just by the way that their generation happened to approach this on communication side.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he and his cohorts would be helping us do the same on the gender side of the story, taking that
Uh,
communication forward.
Aviv, you want to add
Yeah,
something
I
to that?
think technology is really helping push these movements forward. Awareness is a great thing. I think education is the key to real change. And every change needs to come from every level. It needs to start at the family level. It needs to be in schools. It needs to be there need to be politically enforced. Um, and so that means a large
মেসেজ
or
চেক করো, মেসেজ
part of
চেক
the
করো
role
তাড়াতাড়ি
for gender
হোয়াটসঅ্যাপে।
equality needs to fall on men as well. Men need to be allies in change. Men need to be involved in childcare and things like that. There can't be stereotypes that are holding people back from living equally and egalitarian.
Yeah. So let's get to one of the most important, one of the core points that Zonta has to deal with, tackling early child marriage. So there's a historical context to it, and how this affects the health, education. Is it empowering women in any way? And is there any modern solution to eradicating it? Like Farhan, how was early childhood marriage viewed from when you were growing up? Or any efforts were made to prevent it? And do you think there has been social shifts now in the modern times regarding it? How are you looking at it?
Yeah, so that's, I mean, the gender movement in Bangladesh has made huge strides. I mean, we're one of the few or one of the first countries in the world to recognize as multi-genders. So we had a lot of this LGBTQ sort of um, people who identify what's the word? To non-binary identification. Bangladesh was one of the first countries to codify that into law. And we've done other progresses. So one of the failures in our movement in the last, uh, well, ever since Bangladesh was around, one of the biggest failures has been recently we've gone back on the early marriages side of it. We have reduced the minimum age, which is unfortunate, and this is something that we need to address. We all know that early childhood marriages have not only bad um, outcomes for the woman who's getting married, but also the family, and in the broader sense, the economy and the country. We know that longer a woman takes to get married, and her health is better. She gets more educated. She participates longer um, in the economic side. So we have to figure this one out, to do it and sort of ensure that we're addressing it much more, uh, as a community addressing and taking it on head on. And unfortunately, a the government has failed us on this space in recent years.
Why do you think so? Doesn't the society, I mean, the social effect is such? Why is it happening? Because it's true. Like, I think when we were growing up, we hardly saw any early child marriage as such around us or in the village area. But in recent times, it has
We
come back.
we did. I mean, when we were young in
Like really
the
young,
80s, so
yes.
we've reverted back to the 80s.
Yeah,
So we've jumped back 40, 50 years.
yeah,
Uh, Now, what had progressively we had to increase that age.
yeah.
The-
But we did. Like,
and
it's a government thing. Like, you can't get, sorry for interrupting, but you can't get a girl married before she's 18. I mean, there are laws, right? But it's still
so
happening.
that law, the law has been changed now. So the law has brought it down to, I believe, 16, if
Oh,
not
yes.
less.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that is a recent thing. So and it so earlier on the law used to say, I believe 18 and
Yeah,
you have
that's
to
what I
be
thought it was.
uh, before a marriage could happen. But there was always a caveat that parents could agree for them to get married
Oh,
at
yeah,
an earlier age.
yeah,
So you could marry for love. Um, Now that age limit has come down,
yeah.
I'm sorry, are
That's
my
okay. It's
dogs?
okay. It's okay.
I'll just sorry, they're very playful in the morning, and
That's okay.
they've got me around, so they're trying to play. So as I was saying, that they've lowered the age of consent,
Yeah,
and they've lowered the age where parents can approve of a marriage. Now,
yeah,
there are a lot of religious reasons why people think or they think that this can happen, and there is this economic reason as well. When people tend to have difficulties in making ends meet because of inflation that is happening, they tend to look at their women folks as a burden, another mouth to feed. So if I marry them off and move them away from my need to make feed another person, let somebody else do it. So there's the wrongly they sort of think that. Similarly, if as there is not enough jobs available and we're not creating enough jobs, we're not giving the access to income that we used to do when in the last 2 decades, where a lot of more women were coming and participating in the workforce in garments factories and other places, and they were working.
yeah,
You are now not having that opportunity, so you have another hungry mouth to feed,
yeah.
not a source of income. So the default thing is that okay, marry her off. So addressing, yeah, we need legal space where we need to address. We also need to understand the economic construct under which this is happening and the religious realities around
Aspect
which
is
it's
also
happening.
there. Yeah,
Like you said, these are it tends to be very complex. You just can't have one solution to everything. You have to have a multi-pronged solution to it.
yeah.
And I think the government very wrongly gave away that space um, by allowing people to dictate and lower
Yes, there needs to be a
age of
change,
consent.
government level,
It then it's obvious,
community
yeah.
level. Avid, what do you think? I'll come to you. How do you view your generation views this early child marriage? I mean, what do you think young people? You're coming up, right? You will be in a few years. You'll be the one dealing with the government, the community. You are the future. So, how do you think you can play a role in stopping it? Do you have any idea? What do you think? What's your take on it?
Well, Farhan did a pretty good job summing up the key points, so I can give a quick summary. Um, so I did some research, and it seems like child marriage is caused by poverty and social norms and a lack of education. Um, Child marriage often leads to early pregnancies, which can lead to all kinds of health consequences. So that's terrible. And child brides are more likely to experience domestic violence, have limited access to education, and face barriers to economic independence. And because of this, these girls often have limited opportunities for personal growth, and that perpetuates the cycle of poverty and gender inequality. I think what my generation can do is, again, increase education. We can push for legal reforms, and awareness campaigns are good. Awareness campaigns, and of course, economic empowerment, finding ways to make these girls feel like they have some economic independence and some power will help fight against robbing them of their independence.
And you live in America, right? And we're talking about, I think most of the issues are in Bangladesh, but I think it's in America as well. So, how will you look at things in Bangladesh? I mean, how do you go about doing the changes because you live somewhere else? Do you visit Bangladesh every now and then?
Yeah. Visit my family.
So, what do you think the younger people can do? I mean, people who live abroad, because you're a Bangladeshi born living in America, you're a Bangladeshi American. So, how do you think people outside the country can try to bring about a change, if any? I'm just asking a question, what your viewpoint is. I mean, do you think you can make a difference? People, because
Well,
if when you talk about the economic bit, people who are abroad in a far more uh, stable economical place than people more living in the country. And I'm not talking about people in the urban areas, it's more of the rural. So, how do you think people who live abroad can contribute to some changes back home? Do you think they can in any way?
so rural is more difficult because social media technology doesn't reach there as easily. Um, so
No, no,
again, I
no.
think awareness and education are the most
প্লিজ
important.
দরজা বন্ধ করো
Um, these girls need to they sh- they have a right to independence. They have a right to freedom. They have a right to choose who they want to or choose how they want to how they
live
want to
their
get
life,
married.
how they want to live their life.
Yeah.
The freedom of choice, that's what I was talking about. Because if you're not educated enough, you don't have that decision making place where you can decide for your life. So, for that, education is important. And economic stability is important as well. So, I suppose individuals can help, but the community and the government in general has to bring about certain laws and rules to bring about that change. So, anything more you two want to add on this? And I like the part about the violence against women, because when we talk about the 60 activism, we start off with the 25th November, which is the International Elimination of Violence Against Women. So that needs to stop as well. So the key points, what I gather from what you say, is that it has to be education, it has to be the economic position of a person, a woman, uh, and you need the community in general to be educated about it. So you want to add anything else?
So, particularly about early childhood or
In general,
about
of course, the topic is early childhood and the violence against women, because that is one
the,
place I, as a person, when I look at it over the years, I don't see much change.
yeah.
So, do you think is
So,
there any way?
so the violence against women part of it is the
Yeah,
most one of the most critical areas. I mean, uh, it, that has been a place where I was reading a horrific statistics that day that almost 60% plus women face physical or verbal
yeah,
abuse in their lives on an ongoing basis. So it's not about
yes,
one incident. Now, and this is one that cuts across generations. It cuts across income. It cuts across education.
yeah,
And it's very difficult. So often what happens is we uh, bury this in things because of the society that we live in and the circumstances that we live in. I'm sure all of us know couples or women who are facing this. We know couples where uh, the male member is doing this abuse.
Yeah.
and we're still friends with them, and we still party with them, and we still, you know, chat with them and all that. And we've made it acceptable. We've said that, okay, you know, and at times even the victims pretend that this isn't happening.
Yeah.
So it's a very difficult thing. I mean, it's very difficult, and it's not a one thing, one sort of a solution for everybody. There are a lot of reasons why people will want to stay in an abusive relationship. And at times we also understand and that there's no way they can't go to somebody to talk to about it because they don't want to bring shame to the family, and they don't want to force that conversation because that might mean in her separating and access to the children and having all so there's a lot of complicated issues.
Yeah.
But what we can do, I think, something that Zonta and other organizations can do, is for those who actually want to do this, do we have a remedy for them to access? So do we, for example, uh, uh, have call centers where I can go and talk, not anything else, just talk, unburden. And look, this is happening to me.
Yeah.
What can I do? Or don't know what I'm going to do. I need to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
As basic as that. To the place that I'm getting abused now. Or what can I do to stop it right now?
At that point,
Can
yeah.
we
Yeah.
discreetly send people
And that's
over?
a very good
Because
idea. Yeah.
yeah, because you obviously don't want police to turn up at your
House.
house in the middle of the night, right?
Yeah.
But can we have somebody discreetly going, knocking on the door and saying, "Hey, this is not good," right?
Yeah.
To somebody who's just walked out and she needs like a place to stay and she's feeling too embarrassed to go to the family. Do we have a safe
The
house
immediate
where
help
somebody can
or
do
the immediate
the
support.
immediate help?
Yeah.
And then the long-term support is the mid to long-term. Okay, can we help people find a job? Can we have people to, give her legal advice if she chooses, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
cou- just from counseling to immediate to how do we stop it? Do we have sort of a long-term remedy for them? So all that needs to be built in and made available for those who choose to
Avail it.
participate.
So they need to know
Yeah,
it's
because
there.
right now, yeah, they need to, one, that needs to be there. Two, they need to know they can avail it. Three, we can need to educate more people, like coming back to
But I like
communication
your
so
idea,
that
Van. It's
they,
really nice because the other day my son had said the same thing. In fact, he had texted me frantically saying that does Zonta have a call center? So I asked why. He said that I was reading somewhere in Reddit that somebody needs help. So that is one thing Zonta can think about. Another thing,
yeah,
abuse is not just with women.
right now.
Yeah, so
Abuse is
we
that's not
need
with
to
women.
stop abuse,
Yeah,
period. That's it.
we need to stop abuse. I mean, and I kept saying, this feminism movement, gender equality movement is just not uh, uh, a female issue.
Yeah,
There are this abuse across a lot of in a lot of the sectors. I mean, men do get abused as well,
violated as well.
but if you actually look at the number of people getting abused, women tend to be in the 90s, and men need to or 95 or something. Men are
Yeah,
little. So I'm not belittling the fact that men also face this.
yeah,
I'm just saying that for whoever needs to access that, then it needs to be. I mean, I know the LGBTQ community also faces as much abuse. Uh, there is a huge domestic worker
violence. Yeah,
population
yeah,
and who get this abuse, men and women.
yeah,
Um, we have people at lower income earning opportunities, which also face a lot of this abuse.
yeah,
So it's just not a female issue. I understand that,
yeah,
but I'm more or less talking from the context of women.
yeah,
Uh, but whoever, we need to create that sort of environment where people can access it if they choose to.
yeah. But I like the bit about the call center. It's a start. It would be something new. I'll look into it. I'll ask my board to see it because it seems interesting enough. Abir, anything else you want to add? Other discussion we had, what's your take on it?
Yeah, I agree. Domestic and sex-related violence is a pervasive issue. It's global. It happens in Bangladesh, it happens in the US, it happens in college, it happens in the household, and shame is a big part of it. And the shame that the victim actually feels, even though, yeah, the victim feels shame. So it's very difficult to speak to somebody about it and resolve the issue. You just kind of get stuck in a cycle.
Yeah.
So yeah, there needs to be outlets for these people. Call centers would be good. Just anywhere they can speak their mind and they can find some reassurance and some help. Letting because they don't know, a lot of these people don't understand that they're the victim.
Mm. So,
True. So we sort of touched the topics I was talking about because it's not a long webinar, but I would like each one of you to give a concluding remark. I mean, what your takeaway from this is, and what do you think? Like Farhan gave a very good suggestion of the call center, but in general, what's your take on it? I would like each one of you to summarize it. We'll start with, let's just start with Avir. You give me a summarization of what you, this 1 hour. This is something very new for you, I know. This awareness, you knew about it, but this webinar is something new for you. So, how did you feel? We spent about 45 minutes. So, what's your take from the 45 minutes of discussion we had? What's your take?
I think um I think Zonta has a very respectful mission. I think this is a problem that we've been facing for too long, and some change needs to happen, and I think we're stepping in the right direction.
Okay. Farhan?
well, I'm always, like I was saying, very jealous of Abir's generation because a lot of things that they have we didn't, and they've made leaps of progress. So I have a lot of faith that excuse me, the Gen Z and the Gen Alpha and them coming forward will approach it differently. I mean, they've had strong role models, they've had educated mothers in their families. So they've had those opportunities. Like he was saying, he has his mother and aunts and grandparents who takes it. To quote an icon of our movement, uh, uh, Hillary Clinton, who says it takes a village. So it takes a village to for this to happen. It can't be in isolation, but it needs the conversation needs to be outside just being a female issue. It needs to be much more inclusive and much more broader. And thank you, Anhara, for bringing men to this conversation across two different generations.
Yeah.
Um, because this conversation needs to happen with more men. And I go to a lot of these programs, and I've been to. And I was telling my mother this. I keep going to these Women's Day seminars, and I host
Yeah.
a lot of things. And I say, I feel like you when you used to be young and go into boardrooms and client stage where you're the only female there. And oftentimes I'm the only male in these conversations.
Yeah.
And then I sort of listen to it and I say, yeah, I know you're preaching to a choir. Everybody understands and everybody appreciates within that group. It's we need to broaden our message. Now,
Yeah.
it is important to have Women's Day still now because we still need to cheer and keep track of where we have started from and where we've come on an yearly basis. So it's an indication. But the conversation needs to move just beyond an our echo chamber, and I think Zonta has been doing that at for generations. And my hats off to you for doing things like this. And I'm sure the great work will keep on going on. I mean, a 45-minute conversation is it cannot be all encompassing, but you've been able to bring a lot of these subjects into light.
Yeah, 45 minutes got me a call center idea, which is brilliant. And another thing I wanted to add, Zonta this year has asked all the clubs all over the world to bring in new members, which include male members as well.
Yeah,
So,
my chance to join Zonta.
yeah. So I would like to offer you and Avir, and then I'll be offering to more people because I would love it because if there are more male members, what the core value of Zonta is. I think it'll progress more.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and like I said, the conversations has to be now more than just with women, and you have to take in allies in as well,
Yeah,
and get that conversation because uh, I think one thing that I notice, there are more and more people who understand that uh, this gender conversation
needs to take
is
place.
helpful for everybody.
Yes,
And this is uh, this is a conversation that a lot of us want to participate in.
yes, yes. So thank you so much, both of you. I know, Avir, it's late night at your part of the world. Thank you so much. And his finals
No
are
issue.
going on, so thank you so much for giving us the time. And Farhan, you're a
Best of
Thank you,
luck
busy
Madam
man.
President.
Thank you so much for giving me this time. It means a lot. So I
for you,
wish you both
Anhara,
well.
anything, whenever you want.
Thank you so much. Take care. God
Thank you,
bless.
Farhan. It was
Okay,
nice to
the
meet you.
same.
Take care.